Last Christmas dinner changed everything. When my family started planning their dream Hawaii vacation, the conversation I had been dreading finally happened. The one where they would politely explain why their practical daughter couldn't join them on a $20,000 luxury getaway. What I didn't expect was how much it would hurt to hear my father's gentle words. "Mia, sweetheart, this kind of trip just isn't realistic on your salary. Maybe someday when you move up in your career." The entire room nodded with that sympathetic understanding reserved for family members who never quite figured things out. They genuinely thought they were being kind, protecting my feelings by acknowledging what seemed obvious to everyone. Their struggling daughter who worked modest hotel jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, dreaming of experiences she could never afford. The irony was so perfect it took my breath away. They were booking their once-in-a-lifetime Christmas celebration at the $50 million Maui resort I secretly owned. Every upgrade they would enjoy, every premium service they would rave about, every dollar they would spend, it all flowed directly into my bank account. $15,000 in profit from a week of my own family pitying my financial situation. This is the story of how I built a hospitality empire worth over $120 million while the people closest to me remained completely convinced I was just another hotel worker struggling to make ends meet. It's about the dangerous assumptions families make about their own members, and what happens when the daughter they consistently underestimated decides to stop hiding her success. Because sometimes the most satisfying moment isn't when you prove people wrong. It's when you watch their faces as they realize they never really knew you at all. Growing up in our San Diego home, I always knew exactly where I stood in the Castillo family hierarchy. My brother Marcus was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was simply the practical one, the reliable one, the one who would never quite measure up. My father Vincent had worked 30 years as a Boeing engineer before retiring, and my mother Carmen built her career as an elementary school principal. They were proud, hardworking people who believed success came through traditional paths: education, corporate jobs, playing by the rules. And Marcus embodied everything they valued. Harvard Business School, check. MBA with honors, check. Senior marketing director at Marriott Corporate by age 30, double check. Meanwhile, there was me. At 29, I was still introduced at family gatherings as their daughter who works in hotels, not as a hospitality professional, not as someone building a career. Just someone who worked in hotels, the way you might mention that someone works at the grocery store or cuts hair. But let me take you back to where this really began. 2018. I was 23, fresh out of UC San Diego with a business degree that apparently meant nothing to my family. While Marcus was climbing the corporate ladder at Marriott, making everyone proud with his latest promotion, I took a job that made my mother wince whenever she had to explain it to her teacher friends. Housekeeping at the Sunset Bay Resort in downtown San Diego. I can still remember the look on my father's face when I told him. Vincent set down his coffee mug and stared at me like I had announced I was joining the circus. "Mom, you have a college degree," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Why are you cleaning hotel rooms?" "Because I want to learn the business from the ground up," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because I want to understand how hotels really work." Marcus laughed from across the kitchen table, not even looking up from his phone. "Mia, you don't learn business by pushing a housekeeping cart. You learn it in boardrooms and strategy meetings. You know, places that require actual credentials." That stung. But what hurt more was watching my parents nod in agreement. While Marcus posted LinkedIn updates about his latest marketing campaigns and industry conferences, I spent my days learning things they couldn't put on a resume. I learned that the housekeeping staff knew which rooms had maintenance issues before management did. I discovered that guest complaints often stemmed from operational problems that could be fixed with simple system changes. I noticed that our occupancy rates dropped during certain months, not because of seasonal demand, but because of poor revenue management. Every day, I watched money walk out the door because of inefficiencies that seemed obvious to me but invisible to the management team. The other housekeepers thought I was crazy. Here I was, a college graduate, asking detailed questions about inventory systems and guest satisfaction scores while scrubbing toilets and changing sheets. But I was building something. A foundation of knowledge that would prove invaluable later, though I didn't know it yet. Within 6 months, I had moved to the front desk. 6 months after that, assistant manager. Each position taught me something new about the intricate machine that is a hotel operation, revenue management, guest services, vendor relationships, staff scheduling, food and beverage operations. But to my family, I was still just working in hotels. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner 2019. I was 24 now and had been promoted to operations manager. I thought maybe finally they would see that I was building something real. Marcus arrived that evening in his new BMW, fresh from another promotion that came with a substantial raise. As we gathered around the dinner table, he couldn't wait to share his news. "Well, everyone, I have an announcement," he said, grinning as he raised his wine glass. "Marriott just bumped my salary to $150,000, plus bonuses, plus stock options." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom actually teared up with pride. Dad reached over to shake Marcus's hand, beaming like his son had just won the Nobel Prize. "We're so proud of you, son," Dad said. "You're really making something of yourself." I felt genuinely happy for Marcus. I really did. But sitting there, watching my family celebrate his success while completely overlooking my own progress, something shifted inside me. "That's wonderful, Marcus," I said when the excitement died down. "I'm actually learning quite a bit about hotel operations myself. I've been working on some ideas to improve efficiency and increase revenue per available room." Marcus set down his wine glass and gave me that patronizing smile I knew so well. "Mia, that's sweet that you're thinking about these things. But leave business to people with actual degrees. Hotel management is more complex than you realize." The words hit like a slap. More complex than I realize. As if my business degree meant nothing. As if the year and a half I had spent learning every aspect of hotel operations was just playing around. "I mean, you're doing fine work," he continued, his tone growing more condescending. "Hospitality jobs are important. Someone has to keep the rooms clean and check people in. But strategic business decisions require a different level of education and experience." Our cousin Brandon, who worked in real estate, nodded sagely. "Marcus is right, Mia. There's a big difference between working in a hotel and actually running one." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but instead of arguing, instead of defending myself, I simply smiled and nodded. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. "I should probably stick to what I know." The conversation moved on to Marcus's latest project, some marketing campaign for luxury resort properties. I listened, picking at my dinner, while my family hung on his every word about brand positioning and customer acquisition strategies. But inside, something had crystallized, a cold, determined resolve that would shape everything that came next. They thought I didn't understand business. They thought I was just another hotel worker, grateful for a steady paycheck and a modest career. They had no idea what I was really capable of, what I was already planning. As I sat there listening to my brother pontificate about hospitality, marketing to people who had never set foot in a hotel conference room, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to prove them wrong, all of them. But not in the way they expected. Not by climbing someone else's corporate ladder or begging for their recognition. I was going to build something they couldn't ignore. Something so successful that their condescending smiles would freeze on their faces. I was going to show them exactly what the practical one could accomplish when nobody was paying attention. The girl they dismissed as just another hotel worker was about to become something they never saw coming. That Christmas dinner in 2019 lit a fire inside me that I couldn't extinguish. But instead of burning hot and reckless, it burned cold and calculated. I went back to work at the Sunset Bay Resort with a new sense of purpose, though nobody around me could see the shift. By early 2020, I had worked my way up to assistant manager, which meant I finally had access to the hotel's financial reports and operational data. What I saw confirmed everything I had suspected during my time in housekeeping and at the front desk. The hotel was bleeding money through inefficiencies that could be fixed with relatively simple changes. Our average daily rate was 30% below comparable properties. Our housekeeping costs were inflated because of poor scheduling and inventory management. We were losing thousands of dollars monthly on no-shows because we had no overbooking strategy. The problems were everywhere once you knew how to look. But instead of presenting my findings to management, I decided to test my theories elsewhere. I started small. There was a family-owned bed and breakfast in La Jolla called the Ocean View Inn, struggling with occupancy rates that had dropped to 60%. The elderly owners, Frank and Rose Martinez, were thinking about selling after 30 years in business. I approached them after hours one evening, introducing myself as a hospitality consultant who specialized in small property operations. I offered to work with them for 3 months at a fraction of what the big consulting firms charged, with payment tied to results. Frank was skeptical. "You look awfully young to be telling us how to run our business," he said, sizing me up in the lobby of their charming but dated inn. "I don't want to tell you how to run your business," I replied. "I want to help you run it better. Give me 90 days. If I don't increase your occupancy and revenue, you don't pay me anything." That got their attention. Over the next 3 months, I implemented everything I had learned at Sunset Bay, plus strategies I had been developing on my own. I redesigned their pricing structure, optimized their online presence, streamlined their operations, and trained their small staff on revenue maximization techniques. By month 2, their occupancy had jumped to 75%. By month 3, 85%. Their revenue increased by 40%, and suddenly the Ocean View Inn was profitable again. Frank and Rose were thrilled, but more importantly, word began to spread quietly through San Diego's hospitality community. Small hotel owners started reaching out asking if I could help them too. That's when I met Natalie Wong. She approached me at a hospitality industry networking event in downtown San Diego. I was there representing Sunset Bay, though I spent most of the evening making connections for my growing side business. "You're Mia Castillo, right?" she said, extending her hand. "I'm Natalie Wong, portfolio manager at Goldman Sachs. I've been hearing interesting things about your consulting work." Natalie was sharp, sophisticated, and about 10 years older than me. She had the kind of confidence that comes from managing other people's millions and making consistently smart decisions. "I help small hotels improve their operations," I said carefully. "It's just a side project." She smiled. "A side project that's generating serious results. Frank Martinez is a client of mine. He's been raving about what you did for his property. Says you increased his revenue by 40% in 3 months. I felt a flush of pride but tried to keep my expression neutral. The strategies aren't complicated once you understand the fundamentals. Maybe not, she said, but most people don't understand the fundamentals. And even fewer can implement them successfully. We talked for another hour. Natalie understood business in a way that impressed me, but what struck me most was that she took me seriously. She didn't ask about my age or my credentials. She asked about my strategies and my results. Before the evening ended, she made me an offer that would change everything. "You're going to outgrow this side project quickly," she said. "When you do, you're going to need proper business structures and investment management. I'd like to help you build something bigger." Within a month, we had established Coastal Hospitality Solutions as a formal LLC. Natalie helped me structure everything properly, from tax optimization to liability protection. She also began managing my growing consulting revenue through strategic investments that would compound my earnings over time. My family remained completely oblivious. At Easter dinner that year, my cousin Brandon was in his usual form, making subtle comparisons between my career and Marcus's continued rise at Marriott. "Marcus is building something real," Brandon said as we gathered around my parents' patio table. "Corporate advancement, real money stock options. That's how you build wealth in America." He glanced at me with what he probably thought was kindness. "Marcus is building a corporate career, Mia just works at hotels. Nothing wrong with that, but there's a difference between having a job and having a career." I smiled and nodded, taking another bite of my mother's tamales. "You're absolutely right, Brandon. There definitely is a difference." What he didn't know was that Coastal Hospitality Solutions had just signed its 5th client, a struggling boutique hotel in Encinitas. What none of them knew was that my side business was generating more monthly income than my actual hotel salary. By the end of 2020, despite the challenges of the pandemic, Coastal Hospitality Solutions had generated over $500,000 in revenue. $500,000 that my family believed was impossible for someone like me to earn. I kept living in the same modest apartment in Normal Heights, kept driving my 2015 Honda Civic, kept showing up to family gatherings in affordable clothes from Target and Nordstrom Rack. But underneath the surface, everything was changing. Natalie's investment strategies were working. My client base was growing through word-of-mouth recommendations. Hotel owners throughout Southern California were starting to seek me out. Specifically, the girl my family dismissed as just another hotel worker was building something they couldn't imagine. Something that would soon become bigger than any of their traditional career achievements. I thought about Marcus sometimes, proud of his steady corporate climb and his impressive salary. I thought about Brandon, convinced that real estate commissions were the path to wealth. I thought about my parents, still waiting for me to get serious about my career. They had no idea that the practical daughter they had written off was about to build an empire right under their noses. And the best part was I was just getting started. The foundation was solid now. The systems were in place. The revenue was flowing. It was time to think bigger. By 2021, Coastal Hospitality Solutions was generating $2 million annually. $2 million. The number still felt surreal every time Natalie showed me the quarterly reports. My little side business had become something I never imagined possible. But Natalie saw an opportunity I hadn't considered yet. "You're at an inflection point," she told me during one of our monthly strategy meetings at her downtown office. "You can keep growing the consulting business, or you can start acquiring properties directly. Own the hotels instead of just fixing them." The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Owning actual properties meant massive capital requirements, complex financing, and risks that could wipe out everything I'd built. But it also meant control. Real ownership, the chance to implement my strategies without convincing skeptical owners to trust my recommendations. Natalie had already identified the perfect opportunity. A struggling boutique hotel in Carlsbad called the Ocean View Inn. Not to be confused with my first client in La Jolla, this property sat on prime beachfront real estate, but the owners had been hit hard by COVID and were facing foreclosure. The hotel was originally worth $8 million. They were willing to sell for $5 million just to get out from under the debt. "It's a steal," Natalie explained, sliding the financial projections across her desk. "Prime location, solid bones. Just needs operational improvements and some cosmetic updates. With your expertise, this property could be worth $12 to $15 million within a year." We structured the purchase through Coastal Empire Hospitality LLC, a new entity that would serve as my property holding company. The sellers never knew that the young woman they had dismissed as just another hotel worker was actually the buyer behind the corporate veil. The closing took place on a Tuesday morning in March. I sat in the attorney's office signing document after document, officially becoming the owner of my first hotel property. The weight of it felt enormous. $5 million, a beachfront hotel, 54 rooms with ocean views. I was 26 years old and I owned a multi-million-dollar resort. The renovation took 4 months. I rebranded it as Seaside Haven Boutique Hotel, implementing every strategy I had developed over the previous 3 years. New pricing models, enhanced guest experience, optimized operations, strategic marketing. The results exceeded even my optimistic projections. Within 6 months, the property was running at 92% occupancy, with room rates 60% higher than the previous owners had achieved. Revenue increased by 200% year over year. By conservative estimates, Seaside Haven was now worth $12 million. I had more than doubled my investment in less than a year. But my family still saw me as their practical daughter, who worked at hotels and did some consulting on the side. That disconnect became painfully clear at Marcus's engagement party in August. He had proposed to his girlfriend Elena during a romantic weekend in Napa, and my parents were over the moon. Their golden son was marrying a lovely woman who worked in pharmaceutical sales. Everything was proceeding exactly as they had always envisioned. The engagement party was held at an upscale restaurant in Little Italy, with about 40 family members and friends celebrating the happy couple. Marcus was in his element, basking in the attention and congratulations. During the toasts, he announced their wedding plans. "We're thinking of a destination wedding in Costa Rica," he said, grinning as he put his arm around Elena. "It's going to be expensive, but we want something really special." Then came the moment that still makes my stomach clench when I remember it. "Of course we hope everyone can make it," Marcus continued, scanning the room with his eyes. "Though I know some people might find the travel costs challenging. The bridesmaid dresses alone are going to be pretty expensive." His gaze landed on me, and his expression shifted to what he probably thought was sympathetic concern. "Mia probably can't afford to be a bridesmaid," he said with a laugh that was meant to sound affectionate but came across as condescending. "Those designer dresses are like $600 each, plus airfare, hotel, all that." The room erupted in gentle laughter. A few relatives nodded knowingly, as if they completely understood the financial limitations of someone in my position. I felt my cheeks burn, but I managed to smile and nod graciously. "You're absolutely right, Marcus. That is pretty expensive for someone like me." What he didn't know was that I had spent more than $600 on wine that week for Seaside Haven's restaurant. What none of them knew was that my personal net worth had just crossed the $15 million mark. But I sat there, letting them think I was too poor to afford a bridesmaid dress, letting them patronize me with their understanding smiles and gentle pats on the shoulder. The irony was almost too much to bear. That same weekend, while Marcus was celebrating his engagement and my family was discussing payment plans for my potential bridesmaid responsibilities, I was closing on my second acquisition, a $12 million resort property in Santa Barbara that had been struggling since 2019. Another COVID casualty, with desperate owners willing to sell below market value. Another opportunity to implement my operational strategies on a larger scale. Natalie had structured this purchase through a different LLC to diversify the holdings, but it was still ultimately my property. My second hotel, my expanding empire, By the end of that weekend, my total property portfolio was worth over $20 million. But my family still thought I was too financially strapped to afford a $600 dress. The loneliness of that disconnect was overwhelming sometimes. Here I was achieving success beyond my wildest dreams, building something genuinely impressive, and the people whose opinions mattered most to me had no idea it was happening. Success without recognition felt hollow in a way I hadn't anticipated. I had proven to myself that I could build something extraordinary, but the validation I craved from my family remained elusive. They still saw me as just Mia, who worked at hotels with some side consulting. The practical daughter who would never quite measure up to Marcus's corporate achievements. If only they knew that their practical daughter now owned more real estate than most people see in a lifetime. But they would learn eventually. When the time was right, when the empire was undeniable, they would understand exactly what their overlooked daughter had been building, while they weren't paying attention. Until then, I would keep growing, keep acquiring, keep proving to myself what I was truly capable of accomplishing. The foundation was solid, the portfolio was expanding, and I was just getting started. The success of those first 2 properties gave me something I had never experienced before: real confidence. Not fake it till you make it kind, but the deep certainty that comes from proving your theories work in the real world. By 2022, Coastal Empire Hospitality Group was ready for serious expansion. Natalie and I had identified 5 additional properties across California that fit our acquisition criteria. Underperforming boutique hotels in premium locations with owners ready to sell below market value: the Vineyard Inn in Napa, the Cypress Point Hotel in Carmel, Big Sur Coastal Lodge overlooking the Pacific, the Cannery Row Boutique Hotel in Monterey, and the Artists Colony Inn in Laguna Beach. Each acquisition followed the same pattern: purchase through our LLC network, implement operational improvements, rebrand for luxury positioning, and watch the revenue multiply. But managing 7 properties required more than just me and Natalie. I needed someone I could trust completely. Someone who understood both the hospitality industry and the unique challenges of running a stealth empire. I found her at the Santa Barbara property during a routine inspection visit. Gabriela Santos was 27, Stanford hospitality management graduate, and absolutely brilliant at guest relations. She had been working as assistant manager, but was clearly capable of much more. What impressed me most was how she handled a difficult situation with a VIP guest who was threatening to leave negative reviews over a minor issue. Instead of offering the standard discounts and apologies, Gabby turned the complaint into an opportunity. She upgraded the guest to our best suite, arranged a private wine tasting, and had our chef prepare a customized dinner. The guest left raving about the exceptional service and posted glowing reviews across multiple platforms. That's when I knew I had to bring her into my inner circle. I approached her after the guest had checked out, offering what appeared to be a promotion to Director of Guest Relations across multiple properties. What I didn't mention initially was that she would be reporting directly to the actual owner of those properties. Gabby, I said during our private meeting in the hotel's conference room, I need someone who can handle operations across several boutique properties while maintaining discretion about ownership structures. She looked puzzled but intrigued. Are you talking about a management company role? Something like that, I replied carefully. But this position would require absolute confidentiality about business, operations, and ownership details. It took 3 conversations before I revealed the full scope of what Coastal Empire Hospitality Group had become. When I finally showed her the portfolio overview, her reaction was exactly what I hoped for. "You're kidding me," she said, staring at the financial statements. "You own all of these properties. How old are you, 27? Same as you." She looked up from the documents, clearly impressed and slightly intimidated. "This is incredible. You built all of this in 4 years. 5 if you count the consulting phase," I corrected. "And I need someone who can help me build it bigger." Gabby became my operational right hand, managing day-to-day operations while I maintained my cover as a hotel operations manager living a modest lifestyle. She was one of only 3 people who knew the full extent of what I had built. Her Natalie and me. Meanwhile, my family remained completely oblivious. Marcus's wedding in Costa Rica cost $50,000 total. The family held a planning meeting to discuss how everyone would contribute, proportionally based on their financial situations. I contributed $3,000, which was exactly what someone earning my supposed salary could reasonably afford. Inside, I was generating over $200,000 in monthly profit across my portfolio. The wedding itself was beautiful. Marcus looked genuinely happy, and Elena was a lovely addition to our family. But what struck me most was my father's speech during the reception. Standing in front of 40 wedding guests on a beachfront terrace in Costa Rika. Vincent raised his champagne glass and beamed with pride as he talked about his son. Marcus has always made us proud, he said, his voice carrying across the ocean breeze. From Harvard Business School to his corporate success at Marriott, he represents everything we hoped our children could achieve. My son who builds his career through dedication, education, and hard work. The applause was warm and genuine. Marcus glowed under the praise, and I felt genuinely happy for him. But there was also a familiar sting in hearing my father's definition of success, knowing that I had exceeded every metric he mentioned while remaining invisible to his recognition. That same month, my cousin Brandon was having his own moment of glory. His real estate career had taken off during the post-pandemic housing boom, and he was making serious money selling luxury homes in North County, San Diego. At our annual family barbecue in Balboa Park, Brandon was holding court about his latest deals and commission checks. "I just closed a $4 million estate in Rancho Santa Fe," he announced to the gathered relatives. Commission on that deal alone was over $100,000. This year I'm on track to make $500,000 in total sales, commissions. Everyone was impressed, including my parents. Brandon had always been seen as the entrepreneurial one among the cousins, the guy who took risks and built something independently. He spotted me by the picnic table and walked over with that familiar, condescending smile. "Mia," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder in what he probably thought was a friendly gesture. "You know you've been renting that little apartment for years now. With your hotel job and that consulting thing, you might actually qualify for a condo loan. I could help you find something in your price range." The offer was meant kindly, but the underlying assumption was clear. Poor Mia, still renting, still struggling financially, still needing help from successful family members to achieve basic homeownership. "That's really thoughtful of you, Brandon," I replied with a genuine smile. "I appreciate you looking out for me." What he didn't know was that I could have bought his entire real estate brokerage as a side investment. What none of them knew was that I had just hired Daniel Kim, a former Goldman Sachs CFO, to structure our expansion into the Hawaii market. Daniel was helping me analyze a potential acquisition on Maui that would cost more than Brandon made in 5 years of luxury real estate sales. The disconnect between their perception and my reality was becoming almost comical, except for the loneliness that came with it. That autumn, Marcus applied for a promotion to vice president at Marriott. If he got it, his salary would jump to $250,000 plus stock options and bonuses. He was beyond excited about the possibility. "Can you imagine, Mia," he said during a family dinner at our parents' house. $250,000 base salary at 32 years old. That's serious money." He looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to express appropriate awe at his potential achievement. "That's incredible, Marcus," I said sincerely. "You've worked really hard for this." And it was incredible. From his perspective and the perspective of most people our age, $250,000 was serious money by any normal standard, except that my quarterly revenue already exceeded his potential annual salary by 15 times over. But I sat there, playing my role as the supportive little sister who was impressed by her big brother's corporate success, while knowing that the empire I had built in secret dwarfed anything he could achieve climbing someone else's corporate ladder. The irony was becoming harder to bear, but it was also getting more interesting. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show them exactly what their practical daughter had accomplished while they weren't paying attention. Late 2023 brought an opportunity that would change everything. Daniel had been monitoring luxury resort properties across Hawaii for months when he called me with news that made my heart race. "There's a property on Maui that just hit the market," he said during our weekly strategy call. Maui Paradise Resort. 150 rooms, prime beachfront location, struggling badly since COVID. "They're asking $45 million, but I think we can get it for $42. I had been dreaming of expanding to Hawaii since we started the acquisition phase. The market dynamics were perfect. Limited supply, high demand, and the potential for premium pricing that California properties couldn't match. The due diligence process took 6 weeks. What we discovered was exactly what I expected. Maui Paradise Resort was a diamond in the rough, suffering from years of poor management and deferred maintenance. Occupancy rates had dropped to 40%. Revenue per room was 60% below comparable properties. The infrastructure was solid, but the operations were a disaster. It was perfect for what I did best. Natalie structured the purchase through a complex network of LLCs and investment vehicles that would protect my identity while providing optimal tax advantages. The sellers never knew they were dealing with a 28-year-old woman who had started in housekeeping 5 years earlier. The timing coincided with our family Christmas celebration, where Marcus was riding high on news about his potential promotion. "I think this is finally happening," he announced to the family gathered around my parents' dining room table. The VP position at Marriott, they're talking $250,000 base salary plus equity and bonuses. Everyone was thrilled for him and I was genuinely happy too. Marcus had worked hard for this opportunity, and corporate success at that level was impressive by any measure. Dad raised his wine glass in a toast. To Marcus, who continues to make us proud with his dedication and achievements. As we clinked glasses, I caught my mother's eye. She was smiling at Marcus with pure maternal pride, but then her gaze shifted to me with a different expression, sympathetic, almost pitying. Later, as we cleaned up the dinner dishes, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Mia, honey," she said gently, "I know it must be hard sometimes, watching Marcus's career take off like this." "I'm really happy for him, Mom," I replied honestly. "He deserves this promotion." Carmen nodded, but her expression remained concerned. "You work so hard at your hotel, and I know you do that consulting on the side. But some people just aren't meant for big corporate success. There's nothing wrong with that." The words stung even though I knew she meant them kindly. In her mind, she was protecting me from disappointment, helping me accept my limitations. If only she knew that 3 days later, I would wire $42 million to purchase a luxury resort that generated more monthly revenue than Marcus would make in 2 years. The Maui Paradise Resort purchase finalized on January 15, 2024. I became the owner of 150 rooms of beachfront paradise, along with 2 restaurants, a spa, 3 pools, and $8 million worth of renovation headaches. I told my family I would be traveling to Hawaii frequently for hospitality, industry conferences, advanced resort management seminars, professional development opportunities that would help me grow in my hotel operations career. They were supportive of my dedication to learning, though I could see the unspoken assumption that these conferences were probably basic training sessions for mid-level hotel employees. The reality was that I was personally overseeing an $8 million renovation and rebranding project, flying to Maui twice a month to work with architects, interior designers, and contractors, implementing operational systems that would transform a failing property into a luxury destination. Gabby joined me for several of these trips, officially as my assistant but actually as my partner in creating something extraordinary. Together, we rebuilt Maui Paradise Resort from the ground up. The close call came in April, during one of my weekend visits home to San Diego. I had been working on financial projections for the Maui property at my kitchen table when Brandon dropped by unexpectedly. He had a habit of stopping over without calling, usually when he wanted to talk about his latest real estate deals. "Hey cousin," he said, letting himself in with the spare key my mother had given him years ago. "Want to grab some lunch and hear about my latest commission, sure? Let me just put these papers away," I replied, quickly gathering up the documents scattered across my table, but I wasn't fast enough. As I swept up the bank statements and renovation contracts, a deposit slip fluttered to the floor. Brandon, ever the real estate agent, had sharp eyes for financial details. He picked up the slip and his expression changed as he read the numbers. $50,000, he said, looking confused. "Mia, this is a $50,000 deposit into your personal account." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "Oh, that. It's a performance bonus from the hotel. We had an exceptional quarter and management rewarded the operations staff." Brandon studied the deposit slip more carefully. $50 grand seems like a huge bonus for a hotel operations manager." "You'd be surprised," I said, taking the slip from his hands. "The hospitality industry has been recovering really well post-COVID. Good properties are generating serious revenue again." He seemed skeptical, but didn't push further. Still, I could see him filing away this information, probably wondering what kind of hotel operations manager receives $50,000 bonuses. The truth was that $50,000 represented less than 1 day of revenue from my portfolio once Maui Paradise was fully operational. By summer 2024, the transformation was complete. Maui Paradise Resort had become everything I envisioned. Occupancy rates hit 95%. Average daily rates increased by 120%. Guest satisfaction scores ranked in the top 5% of luxury resorts worldwide. In August, Travel + Leisure featured us in their annual Best Hotels issue. The article called Maui Paradise Resort Hawaii's Hidden Gem, praising our exceptional service, stunning renovations, and unique blend of luxury and authenticity. I read the article sitting in my modest apartment in San Diego, drinking coffee from a mug I had bought at Target 3 years earlier. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Here was my resort being celebrated in a major travel publication, while my family still thought I was struggling to afford bridesmaid dresses and needed help qualifying for condo loans. The success of Maui Paradise pushed my total portfolio value past $120 million. I was 29 years old and owned 8 luxury properties across California and Hawaii. But to my family, I was still just Mia who worked at hotels and went to a lot of professional development conferences. The secret was becoming harder to keep, not because I was careless, but because the success was becoming too big to hide behind modest apartments and old Honda Civics. Something would have to give soon, and I was starting to think that maybe it was time for my family to learn exactly what their practical daughter had been building while they weren't paying attention. The foundation for revelation was being laid piece by piece. All I needed was the perfect moment. By October 2024, my empire was worth $120 million. The Maui Paradise Resort alone was appraised at $50 million after the renovation, more than triple what I had paid for it less than a year earlier. I was quietly the wealthiest person in my extended family, probably by a factor of 50. But maintaining the facade was becoming increasingly difficult. Gabby noticed it first during one of our strategy meetings at the seaside. Haven property in Carlsbad. Mia, you're still driving in that old Honda and living in the same apartment you had when you owned 2 properties, she said, reviewing our quarterly reports. People are going to start asking questions if you never improve your lifestyle. At all, she had a point. My consulting business provided good cover for moderate success, but someone generating serious revenue would naturally upgrade their living situation over time. We need a story for gradual lifestyle improvements, Gabby continued. Performance bonuses from your hotel work, revenue sharing from consulting clients, something that justifies a nicer apartment or a newer car without revealing the full scope of what you own. The irony was that while I was carefully crafting stories to explain modest improvements, my family members were struggling with real financial challenges they never discussed openly. Marcus had been passed over for the VP promotion at Marriott. The rejection hit him hard, especially after he had spent months telling everyone it was practically guaranteed. He had become bitter about corporate politics and what he called the glass ceiling for people who actually understood the business. Meanwhile, Brandon's luxury real estate empire was crumbling as high interest rates killed the high-end market. His $500,000 income had dropped to less than $200,000, and I could see the stress in his face at family gatherings. But they both maintained their confident facades, just like I maintained my modest one. The perfect opportunity presented itself in November when my father suggested something that made my heart race with possibility. I think we should do something special for Christmas this year, Vincent announced during our monthly family dinner. We've all worked hard, and it feels like the right time for a big family vacation. Maybe Hawaii. Marcus perked up immediately. That sounds incredible, Dad. I could definitely use a break after this year. But I could see the worry behind his enthusiasm. A Hawaii vacation would be expensive, especially with his recent career disappointment. The planning conversation continued over the next few days. Phone calls between family members, discussions about dates and logistics, excitement building around the idea of our first major family trip in years. I waited 3 days before calling my mother to ask about the plans, making sure to sound appropriately interested but cautious. Hawaii sounds amazing, Mom, I said during our phone conversation. What are you thinking for dates and budget? Carmen's response was exactly what I expected and hoped for. Well, honey, we're looking at Christmas week, probably December 23rd through 30th. But it's quite expensive, probably $20,000 total for the whole family. We know money is tight for you with your hotel job salary, so we don't want you to feel pressured. $20,000. The amount my Maui property generated in revenue every single day. I appreciate you being understanding, Mom, I replied, injecting just the right note of disappointment into my voice. That is pretty steep for someone in my position. Over the next week, I watched the family planning unfold with fascination. Marcus was trying to figure out how to afford his portion without admitting his financial stress. My parents were dipping into retirement savings to make the trip happen. Everyone was making sacrifices for this once-in-a-lifetime experience. Meanwhile, I was calculating exactly how much profit I would make from hosting them at my own resort. Brandon took charge of the research, determined to find the perfect property that would justify the expense. He spent hours online comparing resorts and reading reviews, completely unaware that he was researching properties owned by his supposedly broke cousin. I found it, he announced triumphantly during a family gathering at my parents' house. Maui Paradise Resort. It got featured in Travel and Leisure as one of Hawaii's hidden gems. Luxury amenities, private beach, incredible service reviews. He showed us the website on his phone, scrolling through photos of the property I had transformed over the past year. Looking at these reviews, he continued enthusiastically. 5 stars across the board. People are saying it's the best resort experience they've ever had. And the location is perfect, right on the beach with those stunning sunset views. The photos were beautiful. I had personally approved every renovation detail, from the infinity pool design to the restaurant's open kitchen concept. Seeing my family's excitement about staying at my own property was surreal. "It looks incredible," I said, studying the images with appropriate awe. "You guys are going to have an amazing time." Marcus leaned over to look at Brandon's phone. "What's the damage going to be for a place like this?" Brandon grinned. "That's the best part. I can get us a group rate through my real estate connections. 7 nights for the whole family, oceanfront suites, all the amenities. It'll be expensive, but worth every penny." What he didn't realize was that there were no real estate connections involved. Gabby had simply created a group booking under a standard family rate, the same rate offered to any guest booking multiple rooms for a week. The reservation was confirmed within days. December 23rd through 30th, Maui Paradise Resort. 4 oceanfront suites for the Castillo family Christmas vacation. They thought they were treating themselves to a once-in-a-lifetime luxury experience. I knew I was about to host my own family at my flagship property while they remained completely unaware of who actually owned it. The setup was perfect. Too perfect to resist. During the final planning meeting at my parents' house, the conversation turned to my absence from the trip. "We really wish you could come, Mia," my mother said gently, "but we understand that $20,000 is just too much for a hotel salary." I nodded sadly, playing my role to perfection. "Maybe next time when I've saved up more money." Marcus put his hand on my shoulder in what he probably thought was a supportive gesture. "Don't worry, sis. We'll take tons of photos and bring you back something special. Maybe a nice Hawaiian shirt or some macadamia nuts." The condescension was so thick I could practically taste it, but I smiled graciously and thanked him for thinking of me. What they didn't know was that I would be there anyway, ostensibly for another hospitality conference, but actually to oversee the most satisfying revelations of my life. The trap was set. The stage was prepared. Christmas in Hawaii was going to be unforgettable for all of us, though only I knew exactly why. December 20th arrived with the kind of perfect San Diego weather that makes you forget it's supposed to be winter. My parents had outdone themselves preparing for our annual Christmas dinner, with my mother's tamales filling the house with the scent of masa and chiles, and my father bustling around setting up extra tables to accommodate everyone. The whole extended family was there. My Aunt Patricia, who worked as a nurse manager and always had opinions about everyone's career choices. My Uncle Anthony, my dad's older brother who sold insurance and considered himself the family financial advisor. Brandon and his wife Jessica, both glowing from what they clearly considered their discovery of the perfect Hawaiian resort. And Marcus with Elena, both practically vibrating with excitement about their upcoming luxury vacation. The atmosphere was festive as we gathered around the expanded dining table, Christmas lights twinkling from every corner of the room. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be together, and I found myself feeling the warmth of family connection despite everything else swirling beneath the surface. Marcus had brought his iPad to dinner, which should have been my first warning about how the evening would unfold. "Okay, everyone," he announced after we had finished my mother's incredible pozole. "I have to show you this resort we're staying at. This place is absolutely incredible." He pulled up the Maui Paradise Resort website, and I felt a surreal thrill watching my family admire the property I had transformed. The photos were stunning. The infinity pool with its ocean views, the renovated suites with their floor-to-ceiling windows, the beachfront restaurant where I had personally selected every piece of furniture. "Look at this," Marcus continued, swiping through images with obvious pride. "We're staying in oceanfront suites that normally go for $500 a night. Infinity pool, private beach access, spa services, 2 restaurants. This is 5-star luxury at its finest." Elena leaned in closer to see the screen. "Marcus, this looks like something from a magazine. How did you find this place?" Brandon practically beamed as he took credit for the discovery. "I spent hours researching the best properties on Maui. This resort got featured in Travel and Leisure as one of Hawaii's hidden gems. The reviews are incredible. People are saying it's the best resort experience they've ever had." I watched my family's faces as they absorbed the photos and details, the genuine excitement, the anticipation, the sense that they were about to experience something truly special. "The photos look absolutely amazing," I said, leaning forward to get a better view of the iPad screen. "You guys will have such an incredible time there." I asked questions about the amenities, the room layouts, the dining options, all innocent curiosity from someone who had supposedly never seen the property before. Of course I knew every detail intimately. I had approved the thread count of the sheets, selected the artwork in the lobbies, and personally taste-tested every item on both restaurant menus. The conversation flowed naturally as everyone shared their excitement about different aspects of the trip. My parents were most looking forward to the spa services. Marcus and Elena couldn't wait to try the beachfront dining. Brandon kept talking about the investment potential of Hawaiian real estate. Then Brandon's expression shifted slightly, and I knew what was coming. "It's really too bad Mia can't join us," he said with what he probably thought was sympathetic concern. "But $20,000 is pretty steep for hotel worker wages, you know?" The words hung in the air, creating an awkward silence around the dinner table. I felt every eye turn toward me, waiting to see how I would respond to this casual dismissal of my financial capacity. But it was my father who delivered the line that would echo in my mind for years afterward. Vincent cleared his throat and looked at me with that expression I knew so well, paternal, protective, completely condescending. "Mia, sweetheart," he said in the gentle tone you might use with a child who wanted something beyond their reach. $20,000 for this kind of luxury trip is just too much for someone on a hotel worker's salary. Maybe someday when you move up in your career to management level, you'll be able to afford vacations like this. The room seemed to hold its breath. My father's words weren't meant to be cruel. In his mind, he was being loving and realistic, helping me understand why I couldn't participate in the family's big adventure. Marcus jumped in to reinforce the point, his voice taking on that familiar big brother tone that had irritated me since childhood. "Nothing wrong with being practical, Mia," he said with a patronizing smile. "Not everyone can afford luxury vacations like this. I mean, we're talking about 5-star accommodations here. Hey, maybe we'll bring you back some nice Hawaiian souvenirs. Macadamia nuts or a pretty shell necklace." The room erupted in gentle laughter, not mean-spirited, just the kind of family teasing that happens when everyone agrees on the fundamental assumptions. Poor Mia working so hard at her little hotel job, unable to afford the finer things in life but appreciated for being such a good sport about it. I smiled weakly and nodded, playing my role perfectly. "That would be really sweet of you," I said, managing to sound genuinely grateful for their consideration. Inside, I was doing rapid calculations. $20,000 for their week-long stay. My resort would generate approximately $15,000 in profit from their visit alone. They were literally paying me to patronize me about my financial limitations. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. My Aunt Patricia, always ready with career advice, seized the moment to offer her wisdom. "You know, Mia," she said earnestly, "maybe this is a good time to think about Marcus's suggestion. You've been working in hotels for years now. Perhaps it's time to consider some serious career advancement opportunities, night school management training programs, something that could really boost your earning potential." Everyone nodded approvingly, pleased with Patricia's constructive suggestion for helping poor Mia improve her situation. I looked around the table at these people I loved, who thought they were being helpful and supportive, who had absolutely no idea that I was calculating how their luxury vacation would contribute to my 8-figure net worth. "I'm actually learning quite a lot about the resort business these days," I said quietly, choosing my words carefully, more than people might realize. Marcus chuckled and patted my shoulder in that infuriating big brother way. "That's great, Mia. Knowledge is always valuable, even if it doesn't translate directly into earning power." The conversation moved on to other topics, but I sat there in a bubble of surreal detachment, watching my family plan their vacation to my own property while discussing my financial limitations and career prospects. They had no idea that in 3 days, they would be staying at a resort I owned, being served by staff I employed, sleeping in suites I had personally redesigned. They had no idea that their supposedly struggling daughter was about to host them at her $50 million property while they felt sorry for her inability to afford the trip. The setup was perfect. The irony was complete. All that remained was the revelation. December 23rd dawned bright and clear in Maui, though I was experiencing it from my apartment in San Diego through Gabby's detailed reports. She had been texting me updates since my family's plane touched down at Kahului Airport. "Your family just arrived," she wrote. "They look exactly like their photos. Your brother is already taking pictures of everything. I've upgraded them to the premium oceanfront suites just like you requested." I had given Gabby specific instructions to make this trip absolutely memorable. Every upgrade, every amenity, every special touch that would make them feel like VIPs. I wanted them to experience the absolute best of what Maui Paradise Resort could offer. By afternoon, Marcus was posting Instagram stories with captions like, "Living our absolute best life in paradise," and "When you find the perfect hidden gem resort." The irony of him calling my property a hidden gem was almost too much. Elena posted photos of their suite with its panoramic ocean views and private lanai. My parents shared pictures of the infinity pool where they were sipping Mai tais. Brandon was already talking to other guests about Maui real estate values, positioning himself as the expert who had discovered this incredible property. Everything was going exactly as planned. On December 24th, I called my mother to wish everyone a Merry Christmas Eve. "How's the resort, Mom?" I asked, trying to sound appropriately envious. "Are you guys having an amazing time?" "Oh, honey, it's even better than we imagined," Carmen gushed. "The service here is incredible. They upgraded us to these gorgeous suites, the food is restaurant quality, and the staff treats us like royalty. Brandon really found something special." "That's wonderful," I replied. "I'm actually going to be in Hawaii myself, believe it or not. There's a last-minute hospitality industry conference in Maui. Crazy coincidence, right?" There was a pause before my mother responded, clearly surprised by this unexpected development. "You're going to be in Maui," she said. "At the same time we're here." "What are the chances?" I know. "It's incredible timing," I agreed. "The conference is about luxury resort management. It's exactly the kind of professional development that could help me advance in my career." The next morning, I flew to Maui on a red-eye flight, checking into the Grand Wailea, a competitor resort about 20 minutes away from my own property. I needed a place to stay that would maintain my cover while putting me close, enough to orchestrate the perfect revelation. For 2 days, I monitored my family's experience through Gabby's reports and social media posts. They were living it up exactly as I had hoped. Spa treatments at the luxury wellness center I had personally designed. Private beach dinners under the stars, helicopter tours of the island, snorkeling excursions to Molokini Crater. The bill was accumulating far beyond their original $20,000 budget, but they were too caught up in the experience to worry about costs. All the premium upgrades and extras I had arranged were adding thousands to their final invoice. On December 26th, it was time to make my appearance. I arrived at Maui Paradise Resort just after 8 in the morning, timing my entrance for the breakfast rush when my family would likely be at the poolside restaurant. I wore business casual attire that suggested I was there for professional reasons, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the kind of conference badge that hospitality industry events always provided. I spotted them immediately seated at a prime table overlooking the ocean. Marcus and Elena were sharing a tropical fruit plate while scrolling through photos on their phone. My parents were reading the resort's daily activity schedule. Brandon was predictably talking to the server about the property's history and development. I approached their table with what I hoped appeared to be genuine surprise. "Oh my gosh," I exclaimed, stopping in my tracks as if I couldn't believe my eyes. "What are the incredible chances of running into you here?" The family looked up in collective amazement. For a moment, no one spoke, as if they were trying to process this impossible coincidence. Mia, Marcus said, standing up to give me a hug. "What are you doing here?" "I thought you couldn't afford to come to Hawaii." I explained about the last-minute conference opportunity, how a colleague had dropped out and offered me their registration at a steep discount. Professional development that I couldn't pass up, especially given my career goals in hospitality management. But Marcus remained suspicious, his expression skeptical as he studied my conference badge and business attire. "What kind of conference?" he pressed. "I thought you worked at that small San Diego hotel. This place seems way above your level." I kept my response deliberately vague, just detailed enough to sound legitimate without providing too much information. "It's a hospitality industry networking event for operations managers," I explained, "learning about luxury resort management, revenue optimization, guest experience design. The kind of advanced training that could really help me move up in my career." Brandon jumped into the conversation, clearly eager to demonstrate his expertise about the property. "Mia, you picked the perfect conference location," he said proudly. "I discovered this resort through extensive research. It's been featured in Travel and Leisure as one of Hawaii's hidden gems. The reviews are incredible, and the property values in this area are absolutely skyrocketing." I watched the poolside server's face as Brandon explained how he had discovered the resort. The young man listened politely, nodding along with Brandon's enthusiastic description, completely unaware that he was hearing someone take credit for finding the property owned by the woman standing right next to him. "This place really is incredible," I agreed, looking around at the grounds I had personally transformed. "You guys definitely picked a winner." As we continued talking, I could see Marcus becoming increasingly puzzled by my presence. His questions grew more pointed, his tone more suspicious. "It just seems like such a crazy coincidence," he muttered to Brandon when he thought I couldn't hear. "Mia shows up at the exact same resort where we're spending serious money." But I had planted the seed for my next move perfectly. "You know what," I said casually, "since I'm here for the conference anyway, maybe I could join you guys for dinner tonight." I can probably get some kind of employee courtesy discount since I work in hotels. Might help offset your costs a little bit. The suggestion was met with immediate enthusiasm. The prospect of saving money on what they knew would be an expensive dinner at a five-star resort was too appealing to resist. That would be amazing, Elena said quickly. These resort restaurants are beautiful, but the prices are pretty steep. My parents nodded eagerly, clearly pleased by the idea of reducing their accumulating expenses. It's settled then, I said with a smile. Dinner tonight. I'll make a reservation and see what kind of professional discount I can arrange. But as the family dispersed to continue their vacation activities, I caught Marcus quietly pulling Brandon aside. Pretty convenient that she's suddenly here when we're paying for everything. Expensive, he murmured, just loud enough for me to overhear. His suspicion was growing, which was exactly what I wanted. The more questions he asked, the more dramatic his shock would be when he learned the truth. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Tonight at dinner, surrounded by the luxury of my own flagship property, I would reveal exactly who had been hosting their dream vacation all along. The moment I had been building toward for 6 years was finally here. December 27th arrived with one of those perfect Maui sunsets that make you understand why people spend fortunes to experience paradise. I had reserved the private dining room at our signature oceanfront restaurant, Kanaloa, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Pacific. I arrived 30 minutes early to coordinate with Gabby one final time. The timing had to be perfect. The revelation had to unfold naturally, dramatically, but without seeming staged. Your family has been raving about their experience all week, Gabby told me as we reviewed the evening's plan. They keep telling other guests that this is the best resort they've ever stayed at. Your brother posted another Instagram story this morning calling it paradise on Earth. The irony was delicious. Marcus was unknowingly promoting my property to his social media followers while still believing I was too poor to afford the vacation myself. The bill for tonight's dinner would exceed $2,000, but that was exactly the point. I wanted this meal to be as memorable as everything else about their stay. My family arrived promptly at 7, clearly dressed up for what they considered a special occasion. Marcus wore a collared shirt he had probably packed specifically for nice dinners. My parents had coordinated outfits that suggested they understood this was an upscale dining experience. Brandon and Jessica looked like they were ready for a celebration. The view from our private dining room was spectacular. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed almost too perfect to be real. This is absolutely incredible, my father said as we settled into our seats. This place must cost a fortune to maintain these kinds of standards. The attention to detail is remarkable. Brandon enthusiastically jumped into the conversation, eager to demonstrate his expertise about the property he believed he had discovered. The property values for beachfront locations like this on Maui have increased by 30% in the last 2 years alone, he explained to the table. Whoever developed this resort clearly understood the long-term investment potential of this location. I asked seemingly innocent questions about their overall experience, letting them tell me about all the amenities and services I had personally designed and implemented. Marcus was especially enthusiastic about the service level they had received throughout their stay. Whoever owns this place really knows how to run a world-class resort operation, he said, taking a sip of the wine I had selected from my own cellar. The staff anticipates your needs before you even know you have them. The upgrades, the complimentary services, the VIP treatment, it's like they wanted to make sure our experience was absolutely perfect. But as the appetizer course was served, Marcus's questions about my presence became more pointed and suspicious. Seriously, Mia, he said, leaning forward across the table. What's this conference really about? Your hotel in San Diego is nothing like this level of operation. I mean, this is luxury hospitality at the highest tier. It seems like a huge leap from where you work. His tone was becoming more confrontational, and I could see the family beginning to sense tension in the conversation. This was the moment I had been building toward for 6 years. I took a deep breath and looked around the table at these people who had shaped my entire life, who thought they knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of achieving. Speaking of resort operations, I said, pausing for dramatic effect as my heart pounded in my chest, I actually need to tell you all something important. The timing was perfect. As if on cue, Gabby appeared beside our table carrying a bottle of our finest champagne, the one I reserved for the most special occasions. But instead of addressing the table generally, she looked directly at me with the professional deference she had perfected over months of practice. "Miss Castillo," she said in a clear, respectful voice that carried across our private dining room, "shall I have our executive chef prepare the special owner's tasting menu for your family this evening?" The effect was immediate and electric. Every conversation at the table stopped mid-sentence. Every face turned toward me with expressions of complete confusion. Marcus was the first to find his voice, though it came out as more of a demand than a question. "Miss Castillo," he said, staring at me with a growing alarm. "Mia, what the hell is going on here?" I looked around the table at my family, these people who had spent years dismissing my ambitions and patronizing my capabilities, and felt a surge of emotion that was part satisfaction, part vindication, and part something deeper that I couldn't quite name. "The reason you've received such amazing service throughout your stay," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "All these upgrades, the VIP treatment, the complimentary amenities, it's because I own this resort." Complete silence. Not even the sound of breathing. The words hung in the air like something tangible that everyone could see, but nobody could quite process. Brandon was the first to respond, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's completely impossible," he stammered, looking around the table as if someone might explain this obvious joke. I signaled to Gabby, who stepped forward with a leather folder I had prepared specifically for this moment. Inside were property ownership documents, business registration papers, and my official business cards identifying me as Chief Executive Officer of Coastal Empire Hospitality Group. "This is my flagship property," I continued, watching their faces as reality began to sink in. "Worth approximately $50 million after the renovations I personally oversaw this year." My father looked like someone had just told him the laws of physics had been suspended. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to form words. "You," he said slowly, "you actually own this entire place?" I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me now that the truth was finally out. "Along with 7 other luxury properties across California," I said. "My hospitality empire is worth approximately $120 million total." The silence that followed was profound. I could hear the ocean waves through the windows, the distant sound of other diners in the main restaurant, the gentle clink of silverware against china. Marcus's face cycled through emotions like a time-lapse film. Shock gave way to disbelief, then to what looked like anger, and finally to something that resembled deep embarrassment, as he clearly began remembering every condescending comment he had made about my career and financial situation. Elena reached for his hand across the table, but he pulled away, still staring at me as if I had revealed myself to be someone completely different from the person he thought he knew. The girl they had dismissed as practical, unambitious, financially limited, had been quietly building an empire that dwarfed anything any of them had achieved, and they had been staying at my property all week, being served by my staff, enjoying amenities I had designed, while feeling sorry for my inability to afford the vacation. The irony was complete. The revelation was perfect. But looking at their stunned faces, I realized this was only the beginning of how everything would change between us. The remainder of our Hawaii vacation was painfully awkward. December 28th through 30th stretched like an eternity as my family struggled to process what they had learned about me. The easy camaraderie of the first few days was replaced by stilted conversations and uncomfortable silences. Marcus could barely look at me directly, clearly mortified as he replayed years of condescending comments in his mind. Every time he had dismissed my business ideas, every patronizing pat on the shoulder, every assumption about my financial limitations now hung between us like a toxic cloud. My father oscillated between intense pride and confused frustration, unable to reconcile the successful businesswoman I had revealed myself to be with his perception of his practical daughter who worked in hotels. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" he asked repeatedly during those final days. "We're your family, Mia. We would have supported you. We would have been proud." But that was exactly the problem, and I knew I needed to explain it clearly. On our last evening together, as we sat on the beach watching another spectacular Maui sunset, I finally told them the complete story. Starting from my first housekeeping job, building the consulting business organically, the strategic property acquisitions, the careful empire expansion. I kept quiet because I wanted to prove myself first through results. I explained watching the waves roll onto the shore I owned. And honestly, because none of you ever thought I was capable of this level of business success. Every time I tried to discuss my ideas or ambitions, I was told to leave business to people with actual degrees. The words stung because they were true. Marcus winced visibly as I recounted specific instances of his dismissiveness over the years. Brandon was surprisingly humble about his mistake, sheepishly apologizing for all his real estate expertise comments and condescending offers to help me qualify for a condo loan. My Aunt Patricia approached me privately to apologize sincerely for years of career advice and dismissive attitudes. "I never realized you were building something so impressive," she said. "I feel terrible about treating you like you needed guidance when you clearly had everything figured out." But it was my mother's reaction that affected me most deeply. Carmen cried when she fully understood how severely she had underestimated her daughter's capabilities. "I thought I was protecting you from disappointment," she said through tears. "I thought I was helping you set realistic expectations. I had no idea I was diminishing someone who was already achieving incredible things." There was one financial revelation that seemed to sting Marcus particularly deeply. When I mentioned that my profit from their week-long stay was approximately $15,000, representing a significant portion of what they had spent, the irony hit him like a physical blow. His poor sister, the one he had offered to bring souvenirs because she couldn't afford the vacation, had actually made substantial money hosting their generous family trip. The flight back to San Diego was quiet, each family member lost in their own thoughts about how dramatically their perceptions had shifted. By January 2025, back in our normal routines, the family dynamics had permanently changed. Marcus approached me for serious business advice about a potential career transition into the hospitality industry, his corporate confidence replaced by genuine respect for my expertise. Brandon asked hopefully if I might need a real estate agent for future property acquisitions, his tone completely different from the condescending offers he had made just months earlier. I maintained a humble, gracious approach to these new interactions, but the relationship with my family had fundamentally changed forever. I was no longer the overlooked, dismissed daughter who needed guidance and protection. I was officially the family's most successful member, and everyone knew it. The business continued expanding. In February, I revealed to my family that I was considering major expansion funding to grow Coastal Empire nationally, potentially increasing our valuation to $500 million within 5 years. But I had learned something valuable through this entire experience. Success is sweetest when shared with people who truly support and believe in you from the beginning. The validation I had craved from my family felt hollow now that I had it, because it was based on results rather than faith in my potential. The professional developments were more satisfying. Gabby was promoted to Vice President of Operations for the entire portfolio, finally receiving the recognition she deserved for her brilliant work. Natalie became my official business partner for national expansion strategy, our collaboration deepening into a true partnership built on mutual respect and shared vision. In March, I finally moved out of my modest apartment into a stunning oceanfront home in La Jolla. No more hiding my incredible success behind old Honda Civics and Target clothing. The charade was over, and I could finally live authentically as the person I had become. As I sit in my home office now, overlooking the Pacific Ocean while reviewing acquisition opportunities in Florida and the Carolinas, I often reflect on the complete journey from housekeeping to hospitality. Empire CEO? The young woman who was told she wasn't ambitious enough now runs a business empire employing hundreds of people and providing luxury experiences for thousands of guests annually. The girl who was dismissed as practical and unimaginative built something that exceeded every measure of success her family had ever conceived. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying your enemies or proving them wrong through confrontation. Sometimes it's simply becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. Despite everyone's limitations and low expectations, the empire continues growing. The success continues compounding. And the girl who started by cleaning hotel rooms now owns the rooms where other families make their most treasured memories. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever been severely underestimated by your own family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories about people who proved everyone completely wrong. 5 years later, December 2029. The Coastal Empire Hospitality Group corporate headquarters overlooks downtown San Diego's harbor. 23 floors of glass and steel housing the operations of a hospitality empire now worth over $600 million. 34 properties across 8 states, employing over 4,000 people. I stood in my corner office, reviewing acquisition proposals for our expansion into international markets. Europe was calling. The Maldives had potential. My team had identified opportunities that would push our valuation past the billion-dollar mark within the next 3 years. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Sunset Bay Resort where it all began. The small property where I had started in housekeeping was still operating, still struggling with the same inefficiencies I had noticed a decade earlier. Some things never change. My assistant knocked and entered with the afternoon mail. Among the usual business correspondence was a familiar envelope, the invitation to Marcus and Elena's 5th wedding anniversary celebration being held at a luxury resort in Costa Rica. A different resort this time, not one of mine. I smiled as I set the invitation aside. These days, family gatherings are different. Warmer, more genuine, but forever changed by the knowledge of what I had built while they weren't paying attention. The phone buzzed with a call from Gabby, now Executive Vice President of Operations, calling from our newest acquisition in Charleston, ready to change the world. One luxury experience at a time, she asked, echoing the company motto we had developed together. Always, I replied, looking out at the Pacific Ocean that had witnessed my entire journey. Some stories of transformation happen overnight. Others take a decade of patient strategic building. Both kinds can change everything,